The mediation room inside the Atlanta family courthouse felt unnaturally cold, as if the air conditioning had been pushed far beyond comfort. The chill clung to the polished mahogany table, the leather chairs, and the silence stretched tightly between the two people seated across from each other. On one side sat Thayer Langford, dressed in a bespoke charcoal suit that screamed power and money. His posture was relaxed, too relaxed for a man dissolving a 5-year marriage. He leaned back in his chair, arms casually resting on the armrests, lips curled into a faint but unmistakable smirk. This was not a man negotiating. This was a man celebrating. Across from him sat Lysandra Langford. Soon she would no longer carry his last name. She wore a modest, impeccably tailored dress in muted tones, no diamonds, no statement jewelry, no outward signs of wealth. Her hands rested calmly on her lap, fingers gently intertwined. Her face was composed, unreadable. No tears glistened in her eyes, no anger crossed across her expression. If anything, she looked detached, like an observer rather than a participant. The lawyers exchanged formal pleasantries as the mediator cleared his throat. A thick stack of divorce documents slid across the table toward Lysandra, the sound of paper scraping against wood echoing unnaturally loud in the chilled room. That was when Thayer decided to perform. He straightened slightly and began speaking, deliberately raising his voice. He wanted the mediator, the lawyers, and especially Lysandra to hear every word. He told her that filing for divorce was the worst decision of her life, that Atlanta was a city that devoured women like her, women who had never worked, never built anything, never earned their place. He mocked her years as a kept wife, insisting her comfort existed only because of his brilliance as a CEO. According to him, Lysandra had no marketable skills, no professional reputation, no survival instinct. Without him, she was nothing. Her lawyer shifted uncomfortably, opening his mouth to object. Lysandra raised a single finger. Not yet. She allowed Thayer to continue, watching him with a calm so unsettling it only fueled his arrogance further. He spoke about money, about power, about how he had carried the marriage on his back. He spoke as if she were already irrelevant. Inside, Lysandra felt something quietly settle. Clarity. When Thayer finally stopped, he slid a heavy gold fountain pen across the table. "Go ahead," he said coldly. "Sign it. Let's see how long you last without me."
The room fell silent again as Lysandra picked up the pen. She scanned the document one final time. No asset claims, no equity requests, no spousal support. A clean, unconditional divorce. To Thayer, this was absolute domination. To Lysandra, it was the final trigger. She signed her name with steady precision, no hesitation, no trembling hand. The scratch of ink across paper sounded louder than it should have. Final, deliberate, irreversible. 5 years ended in seconds. The mediator exhaled slowly, clearly troubled but powerless to intervene. Thayer snatched the papers immediately, verifying the signature with growing excitement. When he confirmed it was real, he let out a short laugh. Freedom. Lysandra stood, adjusted her dress, and looked at him one last time. He was already shaking his lawyer's hand, grinning like a man who believed he had just conquered the world. She turned and walked out without a word. Outside, the Georgia sun shone brightly, mocking the cold hostility inside the courthouse. A black sedan waited at the curb. Lysandra slid into the back seat, the door closing with a soft, final click. Her driver, an older man who had served her family for decades, asked quietly if everything had gone smoothly. She nodded. From her briefcase, she retrieved a tablet,
the screen illuminated with the insignia of a private international bank, one known for managing generational wealth beyond public scrutiny. Biometric scan, two-factor authentication, primary administrator access, granted. The dashboard unfolded like a chessboard. Company accounts, personal accounts, credit lines, asset-linked properties. For 5 years, Thier had believed himself untouchable. What he never realized was that he had only been granted secondary access, a convenience extended by her family, not ownership. Lysandra navigated to user permissions. Thier Langford, CEO, secondary authority. She revoked it all. Cards blocked, withdrawals frozen, transfers disabled. A warning appeared. She confirmed. Access revoked. Thier left the courthouse feeling invincible. He called Vesper immediately, boasting that Lysandra had walked away with nothing. They spoke about weddings, headlines, and proving everyone wrong. That same afternoon, they arrived at the most prestigious hotel in downtown Atlanta. $350,000 wedding package. He dropped his black card on the desk. Declined. Another card. Declined. A company check. Temporarily accepted. The cracks had begun. Thier tried to laugh it off. That was his first mistake. At the jewelry store, when the diamond ring payment failed, he blamed the machine. At the bridal boutique, when the debit card declined, he blamed the network. Each excuse sounded weaker than the last. Vesper's smile slowly tightened. Her excitement began to fade, replaced by irritation she didn't bother to hide. When Thier finally opened his banking app, the screen froze, then displayed a message that made his stomach drop. Account temporarily frozen. Please contact your branch. His heart pounded. He shoved the phone back into his pocket, forcing a laugh and claiming his account had been flagged due to suspicious activity. Cybersecurity, fraud prevention, temporary inconvenience. Vesper nodded, but the doubt had already taken root. Promises followed. Tomorrow, next week, once everything clears. That night, Thier sat alone in his luxury car, scrolling through contacts he never thought he'd need. Old friends, former partners, anyone. When he finally called his mother, desperation cracked through his voice. She refused, and in that moment, Thier realized something terrifying. Money didn't leave all at once. It vanished quietly. 3 weeks later, the wedding night arrived. The ballroom of the 5-star Atlanta hotel shimmered under crystal chandeliers. Imported flowers lined the walls. A live orchestra filled the space with music so loud it drowned out thought. Guests laughed, cameras flashed, champagne flowed freely. On the surface, everything looked perfect. But beneath the surface, every expense had been delayed, disputed, or flagged. Thier stood at the center of the room, dressed in a custom tuxedo, smiling for photographs, while silently calculating how much longer he could keep this illusion alive. Then, the music stopped. Not gradually, instantly. Conversation died with it. Hundreds of heads turned as the chandeliers dimmed slightly, plunging the room into an uneasy hush. From the entrance, 2 figures appeared. Lysandra stepped forward first. She wore an elegant black dress, timeless, understated, devastating. Her posture was relaxed, confident. No guards, no entourage. Beside her walked a man few people recognized, but those who did went pale. Mr. Zephaniah, a senior trustee, a man whose signature controlled billions. Thier's blood ran cold. The orchestra conductor stepped aside as Zephaniah walked forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "This event," he said calmly, "is no longer authorized." The words cut deeper than shouting ever could. Hotel staff froze.
Security shifted uneasily. Screens behind the stage flickered as payment alerts surfaced. Unpaid balances, frozen corporate checks, revoked guarantees. The hotel manager approached, face tight with panic. "The accounts backing this event have been suspended," he announced. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Vesper turned toward Thier, eyes wide. "What does he mean?" she whispered. Thier couldn't answer. Zephaniah turned to Lysandra. "Would you like to proceed?" She smiled softly. "No," she replied. "I think this is enough." Security stepped forward. The lights brightened. The illusion shattered. Guests began to leave in stunned silence. Phones came out. Messages spread. By morning, the story would be everywhere. Thiers stood alone in the center of the empty ballroom, tuxedo wrinkled, breath shallow. Vesper had already walked away. Lysandra passed him without stopping. She didn't look at him. She didn't need to. Outside, the night air was calm. Zephaniah opened the car door for her. "Phase complete," he said. Lysandra nodded. "This wasn't revenge," she replied. "It was correction." The car drove away, and for the first time, Thier understood. Power isn't loud. It waits, and when it moves, it ends the game. 2 days later, Thier walked into the company's boardroom expecting damage control. What he found instead was exile. The seats were filled. Lawyers, auditors, interim executives, and at the head of the table, Mr. Zephaniah. Thier tried to assert authority. "I'm the CEO," he said sharply. Zephaniah didn't argue. He slid a document across the table. Emergency shareholder vote. Majority approval. Thier's executive powers were suspended pending investigation. The room didn't react. This had already been decided. What followed was quiet devastation. Audits uncovered years of misattribution, expenses charged to the wrong accounts, authority assumed, never granted. Nothing illegal, but nothing truly his. The narrative Thier had built, that he was the architect of everything, collapsed under documentation. Emails, signatures, trust agreements. The truth surfaced slowly, methodically, without emotion, just like Lysandra. They're finally requested to see her. The meeting took place in a quiet, private lounge overlooking the city. Lysandra arrived alone. No anger, no satisfaction, just closure. There tried to explain, to justify, to apologize. She listened. Then she said one sentence. "You confused access with ownership. Nothing more, nothing less." Months later, the company stabilized. New leadership, clean headlines. Lysandra never appeared in interviews, never corrected rumors. She didn't need credit. From a distance, she watched Atlanta move on. Thier faded into irrelevance. Not ruined, just ordinary. And that was the final consequence. The call came early in the morning. Not from a personal number, not from anyone he knew. A secure line. Thier listened as the calm, professional voice on the other end explained that his remaining personal accounts were now subject to enhanced review, credit limits reduced, spending monitored, risk exposure reassessed. There was no accusation in the tone, which somehow made it worse. This wasn't punishment, it was protocol, and protocol didn't care who he used to be. Vesper didn't leave immediately. She waited, watched, calculated. For weeks, she told herself this was temporary, that powerful men always recovered, that money had a way of coming back to people like him, until the lifestyle didn't. The restaurants changed, the hotels downgraded, the invitations stopped coming. One night, she packed quietly. No confrontation, no goodbye, just absence. Thier noticed when the closet felt too empty. When Thier left his mother's house that night, anger burned hotter than reason. Her words echoed in his mind, sharp, humiliating, final. She had refused to lend him money, refused to comfort him, and worst of all, refused to blame Lysandra. To his mother, the woman he divorced was still the perfect daughter-in-law, educated, composed, born from a family that understood dignity and power. Thier slammed his phone onto the passenger seat, convinced the universe had turned against him. He didn't understand that nothing cosmic was happening. This was not bad luck. This was planning. In the quiet office of a five-star hotel, far from Thier's rage, a manager made a discreet phone call. His voice was respectful, almost cautious. On the other end of the line was Lysandra's personal assistant. The report was simple. Thier had issued a company check to pay for an extravagant wedding celebration. There was a pause. Then instructions came, clear, precise, emotionless. The party would proceed. The check would be accepted, but it was not to be cashed until the event day itself. Lysandra wanted him to keep spending, keep believing, keep sinking. Lysandra had learned something during her marriage. Men like Thier didn't fear confrontation. They feared silence. They feared being allowed to destroy themselves. She did not shout. She did not threaten. She simply removed permissions. Morning light crept into the luxury apartment Thier had rented for his new life with Vesper. His chest felt tight, his stomach twisted with unease. His credit cards had failed the day before, but he refused to accept the implication. Men like him didn't lose access. Systems corrected themselves for people like him. Vesper, however, was already awake, waiting in the lobby with excitement sparkling in her eyes. Wedding shopping could not wait. At the boutique, Vesper moved like royalty. She selected bags that cost more than most people's annual income. Shoes glittered, clerks smiled, drinks were served. Everything looked exactly as it should, until it was time to pay. Thier watched the card reader as if it might betray him, and it did. He laughed loudly, explaining security protocols, premium client safeguards, lies wrapped in confidence. Vesper's patience thinned, but her desire for luxury was louder than her doubt. He promised transfers, signed names, flashed titles. The store let them walk out. Debt followed. The dealership smelled of leather and ambition. Vesper wanted a red sports sedan, a statement piece. Thenier agreed, relieved that leasing required systems he believed still favored him. They didn't. The salesman's smile faded. A manager appeared. Words were whispered. Then came the truth. Application rejected. Frozen assets. Ownership dispute. Thenier exploded. He shouted titles, salaries, insults. The room watched. Vesper stopped taking selfies. For the first time, the mask cracked. Across the city, Lysandra reviewed reports in silence. Numbers aligned. Permissions updated. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The wedding invitation arrived at headquarters in a thick cream envelope, heavy with arrogance. Imported paper, gold ink, excess everywhere. Lysandra opened it slowly. No pain, no nostalgia, only clarity. She marked one word on the RSVP card: attending. She wasn't attending as an ex-wife. She was attending as the person who still owned everything Thier thought was his. On the wedding day, panic consumed Thier. Vendors demanded payments. Threats replaced politeness. Lies multiplied. Vesper floated through the ballroom, convinced victory was inevitable. She never saw the ground giving way beneath her feet. Far away, at a quiet family estate, Lysandra prepared without urgency. Silence surrounded her. Control followed her. She didn't rush. Women who truly win never do. By late afternoon, the ballroom looked flawless. Chandeliers glowed, flowers perfumed the air. and staff moved with military precision. On the surface, it was a perfect wedding. Underneath, it was a countdown. Vendors were no longer polite. Their messages came with deadlines, screenshots, and threats. Thayer's phone vibrated non-stop, each notification tightening the knot in his chest. He stopped answering most of them. There were only so many lies a man could repeat before even he stopped believing them. Vesper, dressed in a silk robe, barked orders at decorators. She was radiant, intoxicated by attention. To her, chaos was background noise. The crown was already on her head. Thayer watched her from the corner of the room, suddenly unsure who she really was, or who he had become trying to impress her.
At headquarters, Lysandra entered a conference room she hadn't stepped into in years. The room went silent. Executives stood instinctively. She didn't smile. She didn't explain herself. She reviewed documents, signed approvals, restored structures that had been quietly dismantled during her marriage. Every signature tightened the system around Thayer. This wasn't revenge driven by emotion. This was governance. When she left, the company felt stable again, for the first time in years. At headquarters, Lysandra entered a conference room she hadn't stepped into in years. The room went silent. Executives stood instinctively. She didn't smile. She didn't explain herself. She reviewed documents, signed approvals, restored structures that had been quietly dismantled during her marriage. Every signature tightened the system around Thayer. This wasn't revenge driven by emotion. This was governance. When she left, the company felt stable again, for the first time in years. Vesper stood before the mirror, admiring herself. Messages buzzed on her phone. Friends, social media, praise. She didn't notice the subtle shift. Assistants whispering, staff avoiding eye contact. She asked where Thayer was. No one answered clearly. For the first time, doubt flickered, but vanity smothered it. A woman who believed she had won everything didn't expect the floor to collapse. As guests arrived, murmurs spread. Payments hadn't cleared. The hotel manager requested a private meeting. Thayer's hands shook. Then Lysandra arrived. Not dramatic, not late, perfectly timed. The room changed when she entered. Conversation stopped. Authority recognized authority. She didn't look at Thayer immediately. When she did, there was no hatred, only finality. In the end, nothing collapsed with a scream. There was no dramatic arrest, no glass shattered, no last-minute rescue. The fantasy simply ran out of oxygen. What Thayer had mistaken for strength, access, titles, borrowed authority, proved fragile the moment it was no longer protected by a woman he never truly understood. The guests left quietly. Vendors collected what they could. Promises dissolved into legal language and silence. By morning, the wedding that was meant to announce dominance became a rumor people spoke of in lowered voices, careful not to sound cruel, careful not to sound impressed. Vesper disappeared from the narrative almost as quickly as she entered it. Status had been her religion, not partnership. When the altar lost its shine, she followed the light elsewhere. There was no villain monologue, no tearful confession, only the quiet instinct of survival dressed as ambition. And Thayer? He was left with mirrors. Men like him rarely collapse all at once. They shrink, slowly, publicly. Each door that once opened without effort now required permission. Each name that once carried weight now required explanation. He would spend years insisting this was unfair, that he had been betrayed, that someone else had pulled the strings. He would never say Lysandra's name out loud when telling the story, because saying it would mean admitting she was never weak. Lysandra never watched the aftermath closely. She returned to a life that no longer revolved around correction. Her power did not come from destruction, but from restoration, of structure, of order, of herself. She did not gain something new by ending him. She simply took back what had always been hers and allowed the truth to stand on its own. That is the kind of ending women like her get. Not applause, not validation, but peace. Because the most devastating victories are not loud, they are irreversible. And when the noise fades, when the illusion dissolves, when arrogance finally meets consequence, what remains is simple and undeniable. She didn't ruin him. She stopped saving him. And that made all the difference.